we're doing tonight and let everybody know, because this is a little bit different meeting than we normally do. It's not a regular board meeting. It's a work session, so just so you know, the board does not take any action on any items tonight. There's no votes on anything. A work session is usually either to give information to the public or the board to talk about some things with decisions that might need to be made in the future, and they have to do that publicly, or to receive information from a consultant or something like that, which is what we're doing tonight. So tonight we have Dr. Paul Kaiser, and I'll have him introduce who he brought with him also. But I asked Dr. Kaiser to come tonight to speak to us about strategic planning, which is, I think, something that we need to do and put in place for the future, but then also talk to us about referendums. The rumor going around is that there's going to be at least 100 referendums on the docket in November of 26. Usually there's, 6, 7, 8, and they're thinking there's going to be 100. So I think we need to start preparing for what we might need to do for the future. And Dr. Kaiser has run and won multiple referendums, and he's helped other corporations do the same. So I thought we'd have him talk to us tonight about that very thing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Kaiser, and you can take off.
Well, thank you very much. This is my Todd Sconce. Todd gave this to me in 2005. I've had it all this time. I also have a Decatur one, but I very seldom wear that. But I pulled it out for tonight. I probably should have ironed it, but I joked with people, said, yeah, I was head basketball coach here in 1984. My cousin Jim Kaiser was head football coach. He's in the Hall of Fame. I'm not, but that's okay. So I'd like to do a quick activity. If you guys would just pair up and get a shoulder partner, and Steve, you can go with me. Think about someone in your life, an educator, who made a difference. Just think about that, and you're going to share it with your partner. Okay? And then you guys talk about it.
Okay. I'd say Todd Fakes. Mr. Fakes. Yeah.
Bill Curry.
Oh, yeah.
I'd say yes. Probably maybe wrestling. Piper was my teacher. Piper told me
Interesting.
my first job, and Mr. Fakes told me to wrestle. So, well, yeah, he goes, "What do you do?" And I go, "Oh, I play football, but my growing." And he goes, "You should wrestle," and I did. He taught me a lot of practicing. I probably wouldn't have had.
Yes.
I'd probably be in jail. No guidance. And lived. I lived by myself my junior year and my senior year. I lived with a couple buddies and a double on a little runaround, and still managed to not really ever got into these problems at school and made weight only because I knew my group of friends were wrestlers. So
Any teacher I had,
that was the
as like
kids. Angina Speck would call me if I wouldn't show up, or I'd call in sick, and I'd like.
So would anybody like to share on who their hero was?
I will. Of course, not graduating from Monroe-Gregg, I graduated from Ben Davis, and the individual that did the most for me, we called him Doc Voris. He was the biology and physiology teacher there. He's also the trainer for the Indianapolis Caps, and some people have no idea who that is, but it was a semi-professional football team that played at the old Victory Field.
And Seaway Old Field.
Yeah, and he got me in the direction of pre-med, and then that ended up, biology and chemistry ended up being my major. And
so make a connection. One of Steve's good friends, Gary Donna, was my high school baseball coach, and he was involved in the Caps, and I used to sell programs when I was in school way back when.
Okay.
And my friend Joe Wolfley used to help coach with them way back. So, anybody else want to share?
Yeah, I said Mr. Fakes.
Okay. Yeah, Todd came here the year, I think, after I left. He came here to be head wrestling coach. And I had both my daughters in phys education, so great guy.
I mean, I guess for me, I picked Susan James, and to be honest, I didn't like her at all when I was in school. But as I think back on it now,
Yeah.
I mean, like, she held us to a really high expectation,
Yes, she
and
did.
she kind of set the example of like what life's really like.
Yep.
Right? I mean, like, she wasn't necessarily fun. She wasn't necessarily, the friendliest person,
Right.
in my opinion, but she was very fair,
Yeah.
and she was very, like, demanding, and she had expectations. If you met them, you succeeded. If you didn't, you failed.
My daughter Cassie graduated from here in 2010, and she had her per class.
I can appreciate
And,
that.
She really made her learn how to write.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else want to share?
I mean, if I had to go back and pick one, it would probably be, I had the opportunity to have Mr. Knoll, which was a very good teacher for me to,
Right.
leading, a reading teacher, and then helping me through the transition back, because I was a Hall kid. And then, I think it was third grade when I had Mr. Knoll, and then we had to move up here to transition to Monrovia, and it was a whole new world for the Hall kids.
Yeah. He was really good.
He was really
He ended
good.
up teaching high ability at the elementary for a long while before he retired. Really good. Well, Trey, do you want to, anybody else?
Oh, for me, it's probably both my fourth and fifth grade elementary teachers.
Yeah.
They were just both, they made you feel like you were, special. Like each kid was special to them, and they played to your strengths, and they found out what you're interested in, and
Yeah.
talked to you about those types of things. And so, yeah, this really made you want to come to school every day.
I'm gonna change mine.
Okay.
I had a eighth grade math teacher, Mr. Parker, very strict, but very fair. And he didn't take any crap from anybody, but he treated everybody really fairly and really made an impression.
All right, do you want to give us?
I probably got two of them for totally two opposite reasons. Probably one was Mrs. Nybert for actually going out of her way to help you actually learn something and work at it, even though you was not very good at it. But she definitely gave them same amount of effort to everybody. And then Fisher was probably just the exact opposite. He was just fun. Mr. Fisher.
Yes, very good. Well, I'll give you,
Hey,
anybody else?
I just got a text that they said they can't hear anything on the internet.
Oh.
They said something about volume's not working, so it's,
Well, I won't tell any jokes then. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Mrs. James didn't know what he said about her.
I have
Lights on.
three
Continue on.
that stand out for me. I went to St. Andrew's grade school at Cathedral High School. I would say one of the nuns, but I still have nightmares about some of the nuns I had. Then at Cathedral, I had the Brothers of Holy Cross. The best teacher I ever had was Brother Raymond. Man, he was really strict. I saw him up at Notre Dame. I was visiting a friend of mine, and when I told him I was gonna be a teacher, he just kind of laughed, he said, really? But I had Dan O'Malley that owned O'Malley Foods. He was my seventh grade teacher at St. Andrews and then at Cathedral, and just a great guy, and we've connected many times over the years. My high school basketball coach, Gene Anslett, his brother Dave's my best friend, and just, he pulled me aside after my sophomore year and handed me some college letters and said, they're gonna give you a full ride, but your grades are terrible. And he put me in as an accounting class, and I loved accounting. I went to Ball State to be a CPA and decided I wanted to teach. At Ball State, Al Brown was my assistant basketball coach, and he just retired from Duke. He was with the women's program there and with Pat Summitt. But he pulled me aside my junior year at Ball State and said, you need to become a superintendent. I went down to the Bursaw's office, I grabbed all the paperwork for it, and I still have that on my file today. And when I got my PhD, he was the third person I called. And he just got inducted the Naismith Hall of Fame as assistant coach, one of the first ones, and then Indiana last spring. And I had a chance to go sit with him and his team from Lafayette Central Catholic that stopped Lafayette Jeff's 28-year in a row winning streak as sectional champs back in 1973. So I digress from all that. But, well, I always like, if you watch any of the board meetings I've been involved, like we did Student of the Month here, and I always start everything with success stories. I like to start meetings with that because, you serve as board members because you're here for kiddos. And just think the impact you guys are having in your decisions and what you do. And I think back in 1984 when I was here, I went to Jerry Pfeiffer. I was head basketball coach. I said, hey, Jerry, can we change the old beat up cardboard baskets on the side? And there was like 2 broken ones. He goes, no, we're not going to worry about that. So I came back in 2005, and I went to Randy Cross. I said, Randy, I want you to call League Company and put 6 new glass backboards up in the gym, which we did, and they're still there unless they've been replaced. And the old backboard is sitting at my house. I took it because they were going to throw away, and I made a table out of it. So I have the original, probably here for 30 years, the Monrovia glass backboard. I'm not sure which end it was, but I have that sitting in my house. I made a cedar table and it sits on top. So I carry Monrovia not only in this, but in the glass backboard. And people come and look at it, they go, wow, I can't believe that. So it's pretty old, but it carries a lot of memories here. I really enjoyed my time here. So I'm going to tell you my life story real quick, then I'm going to introduce David, and then we'll get started. So,
There you go.
okay. So, Indianapolis, my dad was a police officer, IPD for 28 years. Mother was a secretary. I guess we were probably middle class income, I don't know back then, but went to Cathedral High School. Of course, they didn't recruit me or anything and pay my tuition because Cathedral would never recruit. I went to Ball State, played basketball there. I started one game, but I do have the box score when Larry Bird and I combined for 30. I had 2 and he had 28. But I got 2 degrees in 5 years, and just thank God I went there. And then I got my principal's license, superintendent's license, started teaching and coaching at Kokomo Hayworth in 1980. Came here to Monrovia in 84. Coach Oberle went to Decatur to be a freshman or girls basketball coach, and was here for a year, and then went back to Eastern High School in Greentown. There are 4 Eastern high schools in the state of Indiana: Hancock, Pekin. Shoot, I'm missing the other one. But
Green.
Green, yeah, thank you. Right down the road. And then I was at Eastern, became assistant principal. Our head football coach, Willard Rice, was the principal and head football coach, and that happens in small schools. And then I went to Decatur Central. I was principal there for 12 years. Noblesville for 4.5 as assistant soup. Came back here as superintendent for 3 years. I would probably stand here, but Dr. Boyd, who's my professor, yanked me, said, you're going to apply at Beech Grove, so I did. I was there for 13, retired, and then got talked out of retirement. I was Westfield for 4, and retired. Little background, so at Beech Grove we won 3 referendums. We were 3-0. Westfield we won 1. So we're 4-0. I'm retiring from as superintendent, so I want to be undefeated. I've helped 2 schools in Michigan and 1 in Texas with their referendums. Got my PhD at Indiana State. I started that when I was here. I love to fish. I love to fish, and I love to fish. I live on a lake in Plainfield. And exercise not as much as I should. Read, connecting. And right now I'm doing a lot of mentoring, strategic planning, climate audits, referendum work. I have a daughter, 50. We had a party at the Hannah Haunted House over by UIndy. I'd never been there, driven by it 100 times. That was fun. She and 25 of her friends. Cassie graduated from here in 2010. I'll be glad to show you pictures of my 4-year-old granddaughter shooting hoops. We're working on balance, elbow, eyes, follow through. And she's pregnant, found out yesterday with a boy. I'm pushing for Austin Jacobowski. I think it'd be a great ball player's name. And then Kayla was here through from 3rd grade through 10th grade, graduated from Beech Grove. She's an assistant principal in Tampa, and she's pregnant with a little girl. So that's kind of my life. I feel blessed beyond imagine. My vision as an educator is all kids are life ready. My mission is I want to make a difference for generations. I met with the probably about 3 or 4 school boards. I had Eastern Porter on here. I met with them Monday night, so I apologize for the typo on there. And then I met with the superintendent yesterday and got a couple more I'm having discussions with. But my reason for doing it is I just think, to be very honest, the state of Indiana is just really not taking care of the schools. I mean, as Trent said, there's going to be 100 referendums. And I have a lot of respect for Mitch Daniels. I think he's one of the best governors we've ever had. And he made the comment when I was actually here that he made the comment, he said, I'm going to pay for math, English, science, and social studies, and if you want more, you have to do referendums. So schools have done that. And now they made it harder and harder. In Senate Bill 1, it's just unfair and unconscionable. And I don't want to get too political on that. But the bottom line, you know, they talk about all the small schools and state and all this, where all the small schools that don't have a high assessed valuation are going to struggle. And I'm working with Mrs. Senawa, Elwood, Beech Grove right now on their referendums. It's kind of helping out. And some of those schools, if they don't win in fall of '26, they won't exist. And you're gonna see schools consolidate and close because of Senate Bill 1. We hope they do some tweaking to that in '27. They will not do anything in the short session. They made that very clear. But they have to do something, because it's gonna kill schools and communities. I think it's the way to get people to consolidate. Again, we've got some great legislators. You've got one right down here in Martinsville who just does a great job. And I've got to know a lot of them, but I think collectively, what they're doing to schools is just wrong. So that's kind of what I'm doing that. David, why don't you tell me your life story, okay? David is my sidekick.
Much
on
shorter.
referendum.
And more hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, my name's David Galvin. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. Thank you, Dr. Kaiser, for
Yeah.
having me come along. So I've worked, my background I'm a veteran U.S. Navy. I'm from Colfax, Indiana. I named my company after my hometown. I'm a Clinton Prairie gopher through and through, red and black. And I served 4 years in the U.S. Navy, where I went in as a radioman, but they turned me into an IT guy because they learned I not only could type, but I could also work on a computer back in the early 1990s. So data and writing have been a part of my life for a long time now, and I have been working with now 64 school districts with referenda, and I've helped probably another dozen or so with marketing and outreach, public outreach to help these districts communicate with folks outside of their regular circles of communication. So normally the school district talks to parents and relative stakeholders. What we try to do is go outside that circle and find folks that don't have kids in school, maybe they've never had a child in school, maybe they're empty nesters, they're grandparents. So we find ways of communicating with those folks, not just through social media, but through data. So my company, Colfax Communications, we're going to work with Dr. Kaiser to help out. We have done some analysis on the district I'd like to share with you. So I have a little handout. I also have digital versions of it if you, Dr. Kaiser, for yourself.
And what this is, in all referendums, one of the first things, we run a data analysis.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I made copies for you.
No, great.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, yeah. So this is we call this a voter audit. The data that my company maintains is a database that mixes the voter file of the state, of every county actually, mixes it with consumer data. So at the end of the day, we have around 1,200 data points on every registered voter in the United States, actually. So we take this information and we use it for a couple of things. One is we use the data to help with targeting. The data is very accurate because of the consumer elements to the data file. The voter files are people update their voter registration when, if they move, change names, then they will, but they'll update that later. This connects to financial information, so when people update their credit card information, that address changes in our database, as well as their phone numbers, cell phone numbers, landlines, email addresses. So this gives us the ability to reach folks on a variety of levels accurately and efficiently. So saves us money, so we don't waste money sending a mailer to a household outside the district, for example. The other thing is this data helps inform content development. So there are points in this file that we're sharing that shows you a couple of things that I think are of interest. You'll see the voters. We only have the data on the voters, so we don't have data on unregistered individuals. So that is one limitation that we do have. But the data we have is very accurate. You see gender breakdown. There's a party breakdown because in Indiana you vote. Your party affiliation is associated with the most recent primary that you voted in. So that data is relatively new. This is updated. This is updated in September. Broad ethnic backgrounds is usually pretty accurate as well. Voting frequency is something to keep in mind as we start talking about referenda. One thing in this voter frequency information is it's a 1 to 9 in the scale. A 1 is a person who has voted once in the last 8 election cycles. An 8 is a person who's voted in the last 8 election cycles. And the number 9, unknown, those are folks who have registered to vote but never voted. So as you can see, they are 20% of your registered voters in the school district, not the county, in the school district, who are registered to vote and have never voted. The thing that we usually find with the referenda that I've been involved in is that a lion's share of parents are usually in the 0, 1, and 2 category. So parents, and I bring that up because in a referendum setting, parents are usually a likely yes voter. So we want to make sure that when we work with schools, we also encourage superintendents, your principals, and staff to make sure we are trying to get folks registered to vote. And there's many ways we can tackle that because it's part of civics. So we also have high school seniors get registered to vote. You can get registered to vote at 17 as long as you're going to be 18 for the November election. You see the age range as well based on birth year. Your population, so you're almost 30% is over the age of 65. Those are usually folks who do not vote for referendum. So again, so we have to look, and by the way, they are usually the most high fidelity voters. So they usually vote 60+% of the time in elections. So these are things we have to consider when we talk about strategy, not just data, but how we present our.
And is this data like voters in our 2 districts, Monroe-Gregg? Is it just Monroe-Gregg
Yes.
at this point?
It is.
Yes, sir, it is the Monroe-Gregg district.
Okay, so
Yeah,
the
just two
townships.
It's not the county, it's just 2
Okay,
townships.
just want to make
Yeah,
sure. That's
and
what
we
I
don't-
thought, looking at the numbers.
Yeah, and we have the data, it can be broken down the precinct level, the street level, so we also have all of that, those.
For example, in Westville, we had 17 precincts in the last, so we broke it down by how many voted at those precincts, so we knew how to handle them. We had 17 different ones. And, I mean, David has the ability to dig as deep as you want to on this data. But you always want to target, like at Beach Grove, we had 5,000 high-frequency voters. In 2015, we knocked on 5,000 doors. And the next one in 2021, this thing called COVID came about, we texted. You couldn't go door to door. In this community, you can go door to door.
I'm guessing too, you could start to interpolate what the non-voter population is as well, because you know what
Yes.
the population is, you know what voted, the difference is.
One very simple thing
Yes.
that, you know, if you guys decide to go this way, you will take this type of data and you'll take your parent data and you'll cross-reference it. Give you an example, right now, Lori Hammock at Beach Grove, they're doing one in 26, and she was my assistant who took over. She's targeting yard signs right now, just supporting, you know, this is our, don't say anything about voting yes. I'm working with Mrs. Sinawa, huge campaign on voter registration. So if you decide you're gonna go this way, no matter what you do, if Trent's running it by himself, good luck, have fun. Voter registration is between the next 6 months, voter registration. And your parents, you know, it becomes really critical, and educating your parents. I mean, there's a lot of strategies that, you know, can be discussed with that. I mean, most of your parents will support what you're doing because they love their kids. Again, I presented to a district, northern Indiana, that has 3 1A high schools. And I told the board, they love your schools, you can, as long as you communicate. And again, it's all Senate bill related. And the board was very adamant, they don't want to combine the schools. It's like 3 eminences, except they're a little bit bigger than eminence, all in one district. And they love their 3 schools, said, well, that needs to be your theme. And again, you know, having been here and still living in Plainfield, I still go to the IGA for most of my groceries, by the way. I love their cottage cheese and again, gallon containers. I digress from there, but the data drives a referendum.
So how active, I know at one time, years ago, the board had to be kind of hands-off, but not so now. We
No.
can be very public
You
about
can
it.
be very, very active. So
Okay.
in a referendum, and we'll get a lot of details too, great question, so I keep on asking them. So the superintendent and your business person is allowed to work on the referendum during the school day. Teachers cannot, other administrators cannot, not during the school day.
Yeah.
But outside of that, in fact, I told that board the other night, I said each of you need to get 50 votes. And there's a thing I'll talk about related to voter thing. There's a piece of paper, I'll walk through that, and how you do that. But I'm also very adamant, I was very adamant with my principals, you will get your building registered to vote, and then, you know, texting is pretty simple. And we can walk through all those things. Yeah, but you can be very involved. You just can't do it on, here's the key, you can talk about a referendum on school grounds. You just can't say, would you please vote yes? You can give all the information you want to, you can have meetings, you can send information out. You just can't put anything with school, and you can't put vote yes, okay?
We have a do's and don'ts,
Yeah.
if you will, document, Superintendent, we share with you, we've vet through your council, to make sure it fits. But that helps, because teachers get nervous,
Yeah.
administrators get nervous
Yeah.
about that line, where is the line? So, we really work, it's a constant conversation.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, one time you hand a document out and walk away, because I've worked in districts where a social studies teacher thought it'd be a great idea to, give you, have a pizza party if everybody in the senior class registered to vote. And then, the next thing you know, he's in the newspaper and all those fun things happen now, which is a problem because, they could have gone through and wanted a recount or things like that. So, those types of things, we try to make sure we work with the superintendent and principals to make sure everybody understands, where that line is.
And we'll talk tonight a little bit more about what you can do on grounds, you can, especially with registered to vote. You have a lot of freedom to register to vote, except for pizza parties. Probably not a good idea, So,
One of the variables I included in here is one for households with ages, children 3 to 5. Do you have a pre-K program?
Just developmental, so it's not community-based.
Okay. So this is something, one of the things that we can help with, if you have any aspirations of having a pre-K program, these are things that we can help market, the data can help market to these families. You can see education of person is also in here, estimated income range. Estimated income range information helps us understand a little better the pain threshold, if you will, of the taxpayer and where they are, and what might help inform rates, things like that, when it comes to figuring out the formula, if you will, for the operating referendum. Current home value range, this is based on assessments, so this isn't market value, so these numbers are very accurate. We only had 39 households we didn't have information for, so it's pretty good information. It helps in also, again, inform working with any of your FA or your financial advising, what firm you're working with, and working with your CFO.
Mhm.
Home probability model, you have 70%, we estimate, are homeowners, but we also have a large number, almost 20% of unknown. That could be a variety of things. That to me, that was a little high, that number. So I don't know if that means you have a lot of new development coming on, so you have new people moving into the community, and it just hasn't registered yet in the data, or you've got people moving back and forth a lot between home and apartments. It could be either one of those things. But that's something, again, that doesn't really affect too much there. We can, presence of home. So the very back page there, you've got the presence of children. So this is kind of a fun variable for us nerds. You have 42% of the registered voters in the community have we'll call it a connection to a child. There are people who are parents in this data, but there are also folks who are family members of kids, because we know that this information comes from purchasing habits. So if you're a grandparent and you are buying basketballs for your grandkids, then it's in children's hoops or something like that, it's popping up in the data as you might be 72 years old, but you are buying things for a kid, therefore there's a great chance you have a grandchild. So this data helps us. We can even dig down deeper into that and see by age groups, how many generations live in a household, things like that, to really help us hone in on our messaging. And also, this would help us allow us to split up our messaging. So if we have any survey data or any information feedback, sir, that you get from what people are interested in. So I'm an empty nester, I don't care if you're teaching CTE, I don't even know what it stands for. However, it is important to have an economic development asset in my community that keeps my home values high. So that might be a message we would send those voters. And then when the folks who do have a connection to a child, we can talk to the elements of education, the language there, which would change a little bit because their interests are different. So again, that is something that usually is informed by survey data, things like that, feedback from the community. If you do focus groups or anything like that, that information really helps inform our strategy there. And then we also can identify, we roughly are able to identify about a third of veterans in the country. So I left the Navy in 1995. I didn't pop up in the data until I bought a home because I used my VA home program. So then I suddenly appeared in the data. So probably it's relevant to that. So if you have any programs related to veterans, honoring them in any way, then we can send them a card thanking them for their service on Veterans Day or Memorial Day, because this is something that, again, it's about communicating with folks you don't normally communicate with, just to start to build that relationship with them, so that when we start to communicate with them a lot on issues, be it a newsletter or mail or things like that about a referendum, it's not a shock to them that suddenly I'm hearing from the school district. So because we want to make sure that we're communicating with them regularly because they're members of our community. I throw a lot at you. Do you have any questions? The map on the front is the district. It's just a visualization of, those are households and voters in there, so.
And I'll kind of jump back and kind of summarize. When you run a referendum, you have to look at data. And there's another sheet we'll look at in a few minutes here, so I wanted kind of David to talk about that. But I'm going to jump back and talk about strategic planning. And so in my previous life, if we're doing a construction project, which we did, different things, it's really important you have a strategic plan in place. I believe that your strategic plan should be done with the community. I was working, again, the district I was working with on Monday night, the board and the superintendent did it. Well, that's really good. It's a good plan, but there was no community involvement. I did Bedford North Lawrence's strategic plan, gosh, a year ago. We had 45 community members involved. Tried to get Damon Bailey, but he was too busy. If you follow basketball, he was too busy. At Mississinawa, we did theirs, he had 75 involved. And so if you choose to do a strategic plan, it's really not hard to do. I can teach Trent how to do it, he can do it. I mean, you can hire someone to do it, that. But I think it's really important, regardless of what you're gonna do. So I know you're doing some feasibility work with Schmidt, who I worked for Performance Services, just so you know, but I did recommend to Trent that he look at Schmidt and another company. They're a good company. They did work for us in Westfield. Wayne Schmidt had a company forever, good company. But that feasibility is a really good start. But then doing strategic plan where you share that feasibility study with the community, because they've got to know what's going on. If they're going to support it, I never forget when the new elementary just went in, and all the homes went in down there that, finally have taken off. And then the land across the street, I don't know if John Dowden owned that, I forget who owned that, in that grass field across the street from the homes. But regardless, we were all concerned about, oh gosh, we're gonna have that on. So Scott Everett arranged a meeting up at, I think it was Charlotte's at the time, with with Kurt Everett, the whole group. And I'll never forget, I just talked about, hey, we may have to do this, and Kurt's dad said, Paul, whatever you do, just build the darn thing big enough so we don't have to talk about it again. But it was important then to get all the farmers and everybody involved to say, hey, listen, we're just talking about this. When Eminence did their referendum, I went over and I was at Beech Grove, and Terry Turner was superintendent, and Mr. Gore and Mr. Shoup were on the board, and they said, well, how do we win this? I said, you gotta go up here to Dairyland, where Billy Bible owned those, and I think the family still owns them. You gotta go up there and you gotta start talking to all your friends, because you gotta get people involved. And transparency, no matter what you're gonna do, whether you're gonna do a construction, whether you're gonna do a referendum, you gotta get people involved. You just can't do it as the superintendent of the board, because it'll bite you in the butt. When I did it in my previous district, we had the mayor and everybody else involved. It's just, that's an important part. Now, strategic plan is real simple. I've got a simple, but I need to change the setting on my computer. There we go. So, I actually, when I was superintendent here, I asked those 4 questions of our staff. I learned that from a guy named David Briggs at Alhambra High School back in, the late 80s when I was principal at Decatur Central. And so 4 questions I asked. I just did this with, there's service centers around the state. 3 weeks ago, I worked with Don Harmon up there, and they have 50 schools that feed in, and so we started theirs. We changed the verbiage a little bit, but I asked the question, what do you believe about kids? That's the heart. And I believe all kids can learn. Success breeds success, and we control the conditions of success. I just really believe that. And so doing an activity, trying to be a great activity to have your principals do with their staff to gauge it, and then come back and do it at a later time. The second question I ask is, what do you know about kids? What does research says? What does research say about reading? You know, research says for sure you do not want multiple grade level transitions. You guys do it right. At Beech Grove, we had a K-1 building, a 2-3 building, a 4-5-6, a 7-8, and a high school. The research says when kids transition from one building to less, some of them, it's a struggle for. Now, we tried to change that at Beech Grove. We didn't have the money. Laura has done some adjustments. But the fact that, you know, you've got one elementary, you know, a middle school within this building, that's really good for kids. You know, because the transition from the middle school to here, unless someone stuffs you in a locker, it's not too bad, okay? So, I mean, that's what research says. The third thing, what do you want for kids? That's your vision. You know, what's your vision? You know, ours was all rocks are life ready. One, it was easy, I could remember it. And our goal was the day after graduation, same thing in my previous districts, you want those kids to be ready. We have a great construction trades programs. I've got a connection with the union, Kentucky Indiana Union people. I can get anybody an apprenticeship as long as today. I've got a grandson. I told him as soon as you finish high school, you want to do this, we'll get you down there and they'll get you in a program. Right now, if you want to go into sheet metal, they'll take you through a 2-year apprentice program. You get college credit from Ivy Tech while you're doing it, and you're going to make a lot of money. If you go into refrigeration, you make $100,000 a year. So getting our kids ready for those, that kind of comes back to what our vision is on that. And then I have 4 major areas that I use under the strategic plan: academics, careers, facilities, and wellness. The biggest thing that surprised me when I went to large district like Westfield, the number of our kids that just struggled. We're not talking just struggled. I mean, it's a tough time to be kids. And I think the more money you have, the more challenging it is. Quite frankly, if you grew up in an affluent area, so we focused on counselors and things like that, and wellness of staff, students, it's real critical. Careers, academics, careers is both teachers and kids. You know, we want kids, the next day after graduation, we want to be able to do something. And there's so many great programs. I know here we send a lot of kids. I'll stay since I'm here today. Send a lot of kids to Ben Davis, great program. I mean, you can learn any trade there and go out and make great money. And those are great jobs for our kiddos. And then, you know, just facilities, you've already started that. So there's a process I go through in that, and, you know, you can do a strategic plan in 2 or 3 meetings, but it's critical you have parents involved. And it all involves, and that's pretty simple as far as it. I've got a diagram I show with all the arrows going in 1 days. That's a school district with strategic planning. I've got another one, the arrows are going like this, that's one without. And the board, you guys approved the strategic plan. And again, it's not hard to do. And again, I did those at Bedford and Miss Central in 3 meetings. And we probably could have got done in 2, but I was long-winded. Actually, the superintendent of Bedford is a lot, and you can tell Kevin, he's a lot more long-winded than I am. So that's strategic planning. Any questions on that? It's not hard to do, but it is critical you have one. And did I send you samples of those? If not, I'll
Yeah,
send
you sent me, I believe Miss Senewal and Bedford North Lawrence
Yeah,
both.
real simple. And out of your strategic plan, you create learning targets and performance targets. A learning target is based on academics. A performance target is that we want to update our buildings. I believe Dr. Robertson he did a lot of work with HVAC here. I mean, he did a lot to really clean this up, and your facilities look really good. But what's next based on growth and where you're going, what do you need? You know, that's something you can determine through that. But it's critical you have the community input. I always like to get, you know, since you really have 3 buildings with the middle school, you know, 10 to 15 parents from every place. And then I always tell superintendent, I teach school finance at Indiana State. I started that when I was here. After I finished my PhD when I was here. I teach, what I'm teaching right now, I teach in that class. And I always talk about you know, how do you get the community involved? And it's just critical that they're involved in it from that standpoint. And then from there, I use what's called continuous quality, and from there we do performance targets, and then that always, I won't bore you with that tonight, but that always goes down to the classroom level. The districts I've been in, both Beech Grove and Westfield, every teacher has to do a learning target, and the principal meets with them 3 times a year to go through that learning target. A superintendent meets with the principals 3 times a year, and the board meets with the superintendent 3 times a year to talk about performance targets and goals. It's a system, it's a baldridge if you're familiar with the business world. It's pretty simple stuff. Okay, and I'm not the smartest guy in the world, so I try to use the KISS principle from that standpoint.
When you think of your strategic plan, like what level is that going? I mean, like how detailed is it? I guess what I'm asking is,
Yeah.
you know, it's easy to say, oh, we want to upgrade facilities or
Yeah.
improve education, right?
Yeah.
But then there's tactical things that happen after that.
Absolutely.
And I know from a board, you know, one thing we've always struggled with is everything you're choosing, you're not choosing something else.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So we could say, okay, let's update facilities, for instance.
Right.
Let's build a, you know, I don't know, I even throw something out there, you know, a new gym.
Yeah.
Right? But that means I'm not buying, you know, classrooms at the elementary maybe, right? Or something like that. So does it go to that level?
Absolutely.
And, I mean, that,
So-
like it starts getting more tactical.
So I'll give you an example, and I don't know if I sent you Beech Groves, I can send that. We did that one, gosh, 2018 or 19. Again, because we knew we were gonna do a referendum. And we broke it down. For example, when I first went to Beech Grove in 2008, we wanted to do an early learning center. We finally did it in 2020.
Right.
Okay, but it was always on our goal, and I couldn't do that, I couldn't touch the athletic facilities, woefully needed it, Mark knows, he worked there with us. If you stood on the sideline of the football field, you could barely see the other coach on the other side unless there was 6'6". The crowd was so bad. But I couldn't do that until we addressed HVAC. And then once we did HVAC, then we did performing arts, because there's no way I'm gonna touch the worst baseball field in Marion County and the worst football field until we took care of performing arts. So we built a new band. And so it took 13 years before we could finally touch the athletic facilities, because we set up those priorities back after
But the plan you're talking about would kind of do that. It kind of lists like,
Yes.
this is the overall goal. These
Yeah.
are kind of the tactical steps to do
Absolutely.
it. Here's some maybe proposed timelines to do
Yeah.
it in. And then we could adjust the timelines as things come up.
For
right?
example, your debt's coming off the elementary here
Right.
pretty soon, I think the next year or two from, because it was here when I started.
Yep.
And you don't want the tax rate to drop. You also can keep this in mind too, and I don't wanna get way ahead of this. I talked to Trent about this, as that debt drops off here in debt service, you can add it back in a referendum to help get money to operations and not, you know, you have to work with Stiefel?
Stiefel, yeah.
Stiefel, they can do that. I'm working with Delphi Schools right now. She doesn't want to do a referendum. And I'm gonna talk to the board why they don't want to do it, because they have plenty of geo capacity. I'm not sure you have a lot here, because we didn't when I was here. When you can do geo bonds, you can do a lot. So there's ways to look at debt service when that's coming down, a lot of different things to look at that. But you know, the plan that Schmidt's doing for you will lay some of that out. And then you as a board have to prioritize it. But it's good, and I don't think a strategic plan is ever for a period of time. It's a strategic plan, and what I told the board the other night, every time you as a board approve a motion that ties back to the strategic plan, you should denote that in the motion. For example, motion to enhance the soccer field, okay? Da-da-da. Well, it was that part of your facilities plan. If it is, you wanna actually reference back to the number in the strategic plan, so everybody knows, yeah, we're approving this, but it was based on a strategic plan that we did.
And if you're
That
talking
makes
about
sense.
something that's not in the strategic plan, that's probably your focus on maybe the wrong thing as well, right?
Well, it's always said, I had a teacher one time wanted to do a unit on Star Wars, okay? And I said, well, tell me how that ties to Indiana state standards. Well, she did. I mean, she had it tied in, I said, you can do it, okay? But it has to tie back to your strategic plan, everything that you do. And again, I can share with Trent, you know, performance targets and how that works, but you've got to get it down, as we talk about academics up here, you got to get it down to the classroom level. We started some of this CQI work when Chris Sampson was here and Melissa was the literacy coach. A couple years into that, Monroe Elementary was a 4-star elementary because they started doing some of the literacy things. Mr. Knoll and some of those teachers, I mean, they really bought into it at that time. And, but it all came back from the work that we started on literacy and things like that. So, But strategic plan, it's gotta get down to that level. You can say by this year, you as a board will work with Trent and your team and say, okay, this is where money is, this is where we are. I knew when I went to, we had the lowest assessed value in Marion County. We had the largest circuit breaker loss in the state, at Beech Grove. At Beech Grove right now, they collect nothing in operations and haven't since 2010. And that's why they've had to do referendums. You're a little bit better off than that, okay? But my point for saying that, so you just have to kind of look, it took 13 years to get an early learning center in, that we're very proud of it, and finally update the athletic facilities, which are pretty darn decent. A lot better than when Mark was doing PA system for us there, so. But strategic planning, it's not hard to do, but you gotta get community involved. And I always tell superintendents, I said, when you become a superintendent, the first day on the job, you're a referendum school. Whether you are now or not, I'm just telling you right now, I think everybody's gonna go that way, especially with Senate Bill 1. And you've gotta keep a list of who your key communicators, you guys know who they are. When I went up north to Westfield, first thing I did was, okay, give me all the key communicators in Westfield. I did a lot of cookies and a coffee with Kaiser's. I went to a lot of homes, and I suggest that trend. Whatever you do, start going out, find the key communicators, or go to their house and say, hey, can you invite 5 neighbors? Let's just talk about school. And that helps a lot, especially when you're in a pandemic and you're trying to do a referendum. But you gotta reach out, you gotta go to homes, you gotta talk to people. And, and the same thing with strategic plans, especially if you're gonna build.
What's a reasonable time frame to, like, if we said, yeah, we wanna do a strategic plan, what's a reasonable time frame that we would have a document that?
Oh, you could have it done by spring break easily.
Okay.
The one at Bedford, we did in 2 months.
Wow.
It's not that, 3 meetings, it's not hard. Like I said, you ask those questions, we do I love sticky notes. You get consensus, you send it back out. And the first 2 meetings, you're developing it, the third, you're reviewing it, and you're ready to go. Now the performance targets are gonna take a little bit longer, but you kind of develop the plan that we wanna do X, Y. We wanna upgrade our facilities. We wanna upgrade our facilities based on potential growth that might be coming, especially with the 1,000 acres that are being developed at the golf course over here, and how much is that gonna spill over? I mean, he's built a lot of golf courses and increased a lot of population when that's going on. So he lives in his kids all go to Westfield schools. Hinky does, so good guy, good family. But it's not hard to do, but it's always evolving. And then, for example, at Bedford, I worked with Kevin. It's great for him because now his evaluation is based on the strategic plan. So, does that help with strategic plan? At least give you an idea. It's not hard to do. It can be done. It can be done relatively quickly. December's around the corner. You could have a meeting in December. That might be a little quick, but you could hold 2 meetings in January, have a final meeting in February, and have a draft for the community. It wouldn't be that hard to do. Okay. So, want to talk a little more detail about referendums? So, I think what I'll do, I'm trying to get this going here. I always talk to people about the why. And how many people remember Kent DeConk? Okay, Kent was there. Kent is one of my very best friends. Our kids grew up together. Kent retired and just spent 3 weeks in Italy. And he just got back from Florida, he and Amanda. But his 2 daughters and my 2 daughters grew up in Westfield together. And he's retired again. So I created, and this, I'm not gonna go through all this, but Kent and I created this, I call it the Kaiser top 10 things to win. And not just to referendum, but win your community over. For example, in my 2 previous districts, we have a gold card. Anybody 60 and older gets into every event free. Okay, and one, they deserve it. They have paid for a lot of things over the years, and you want them coming to events. You want to get your local nursing home. Hey, you want to come to a choir show, and I'm sure we still have great choir shows here with the new auditorium and stuff. And but you want them to come, so give it to them for free. And the good thing is when they come pick it up, you get their email address. And we do, in my previous districts, we do a newsletter. It goes out every Thursday at 4 o'clock. We call it the Hornet Blast and the Shamrock Blast. Every Thursday at 4 o'clock it goes out. And I can send samples of that. I just sent it to a school I met with yesterday at lunch to talk about this. And why that's important is transparency, transparency, transparency. You know, whether you do anything at all, I think a newsletter coming from the district, not to put a lot of pressure on your office.
One's going out Friday.
Okay.
First one we're doing.
Yeah, but it goes out every time, and a lot of videos. I mean, Mark and his team can create all these great success stories that you guys do. They should be out there, they should be going out in videos, and again, I've got a whole litany of previous ones from my 2 districts. You gotta send that message, because majority of your people in this community don't have schools, the kids in school. And they went through, but they wanna be informed. So the gold card's really important, because you get them coming to events, and then you get them the information. So when you start talking on, hey, we're gonna build, I know we've got a nice wrestling room, but we're gonna build X, Y, Z. When I got here, the old sewer, out here, the sewer thing was still here, so we gravelled it over, then Bill paved it. But whatever you want to, you gotta get that out there. It may not be every week, but at least every other week.
And you gotta get it to people outside of your school district, right?
Yes.
Which is something I don't know if they were so great
Well,
at, right? I mean,
David,
historically.
you wanna talk about that, how we can get people outside the school parents to get that information?
Yeah, so I mean, both we can do, as I saw in the data, there are the folks who don't have kids, so we have all their contact information. We want to invite people from outside of the district. We can just tell me how far out you want to go, and we're able to cut the data, if you will, based on a map, so called the turfs. So we'd be able to find those folks, and then set an age, say over 65, and then we worked together. Before, we did a gold card that was embedded in a postcard. So they just needed to cut the postcard, actually it was perforated already, they just could tear the card out, and then they could take it with them to an event, and I think they could go to the office and get a real one, a plastic
Yeah.
one, or some districts that I've worked with, they've taken the card and just, allowed that to be, and they laminated it for them. So then it has the rules and regs on each of the gold cards, so that way you're not mailing it again to people who aren't 65, you're mailing it to the households of people who are with their names on it.
And we let, we let people outside the district that had grandkids in the district get one. And again, my fault, they've paid for kids forever. I mean, it's not, and let's get them in, let's get them to see their kids. I mean, some are on fixed incomes or not, but, let them come to ball games.
I was thinking more about the messaging and like the newsletters and
Same.
things like that. Like, it's easy to send that to people that we have the list because their kids go
But
here, right? But
we can do that.
there's a lot more people that don't.
Yeah,
right?
we can
Really
do
think
that.
about it.
We can send anybody that on that list, we can send the email to, on the newsletters. It's easily done, and should be done, quite frankly. They're in your community, and a lot of them would wanna know. So, I still get the emails in my 2 previous districts, just because I wanna know what's going on, so really, the top 10, I'm not gonna go through. The key thing is, the board has to be on the same page. They've gotta be committed to do this. You gotta know who your key communicators are. I mean, you gotta talk to them. When Plainfield High School built their new high school, Dr. Hollifield went to every key communicator in Plainfield. He took them to Taco Bell, because he was very thrifty, and talked about this new high school that's now almost 20 years old. But whatever you're gonna do, I asked, when I met with the Bedford, the North Lawrence board, I asked the people there, I said, where do all the farmers have breakfast at? And I looked at the superintendent and said, you need to start going there every Friday. Just put on your Bedford stuff, just go and just sit and get to know them. Because they gotta trust you, they gotta know you. When I had hair, I got my hair cut at Vinnie's Barber in Beech Grove. And I went there for a purpose, because Randy Clevenger would go to Ken's Barber Shop, and that's where the more mature people would go, age-wise. And Vinnie's was the 30-year-old, and I wanted to go there. I wanted Vinnie to know me, and I mean, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but there's so much you have to do. Whether you're gonna do referendum, you gotta be involved in the community. I lived here most of the time I was at Beech Grove, and most people didn't know I didn't live in Beech Grove, because I went to everything. But getting those key communicators, getting them involved, whether you're gonna build shuffleboard, whatever you're gonna do, you gotta get people involved, they gotta know it. You don't want social media from other people to control what's really going on, from that standpoint. So that top 10, I'm not gonna go through it all, but know your key communicators, communicate. My daughter just started her first assistant principal's job, She goes, Dad, I'm a little nervous. I said, Kayla, you got a great personality. It's real simple. It's 3 words: relationships, relationships, and relationships. It's like when I went up to, I think it was Charlotte at the time, and I met with all those guys, and, you know, and I was just talking about it, but I talked to them about it. Now, we ended up not doing it, because those neighborhoods didn't grow as fast, but we were talking about, cafeteria was built too small, probably, at least at that time. And but you can look through those if you want to. The other item in there that I put together, working with David, is an 18-month calendar that's now 12 months. Okay? And well, my goal is tonight is just so you know what it takes to be successful in reaching out to the community, and if you decide to do a referendum. I'm not here for any other reason, just give you information so you guys can have those informed discussions. And so, I put this together. Again, David and I have done put 4 together. And this started back in August when I was meeting with superintendents. And the first 6 months is voter registration. And working on your messaging and being transparent and start having meetings on once you guys decide what you might want to do or might not want to do. I would suggest the same thing with any construction project, have meetings. And, you know, I'm sure Dr. Will probably had meetings when they were building the elementary and doing this. And I was the first year that Hall was closed. It was my first year here, which is hard to believe. But I put this together just so people would understand. When I met with the superintendent at Elwood, I went through all the stuff. I said, well, what do you think? He goes, I'm just overwhelmed. Because if you haven't done one, you cannot. Use the example. I'm at St. Andrews football field. I'm down at the 1 yard line. I got 99 yards to go. I've never done a referendum. I don't have a clue what to do. Okay? And what I try to do with this calendar is just kind of lay out. These are the things, you're planning all these planning meetings. And then I put board meetings on there. But then, you know, when you get to June of 26, you get pretty serious about it. I mean, you've worked on your messaging, you're doing things. One thing, for example, I mean, the great logos you have on the stadium scoreboard for Gordon Hadley, you know, one thing that Beech Grove's doing right now, they're just putting yard signs out, you know, about the school. They don't say vote yes, they don't do anything. Mrs. Senewa is doing a ton of voter registration. I can show, I can send you some videos of board members. This one guy, he's a great guy, tells great jokes too, the board member at Mrs. Senewa. He's got the American flag flying, he's saying everybody needs to get out and register to vote. You can register people to vote on school grounds, okay? You just cannot ask them to vote yes. I mean, we had iPads at every desk, and the parents go, hey, would you like to register to vote? And also, just because they think they're registered to vote, they may not be, because they purge, if you haven't voted in a while, they will purge your name out of the voter registration file. So, and it's very, and do not do a paper voter registration. I actually lost 3 of them that I did by hand, and I found them later, and they showed up at the polls, they weren't registered. Let them do it online. It takes 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Don't do it online. Don't take one because you're responsible for turning it in, and I messed up. So we still won though. So that's just a calendar I put together. And again, that can be condensed down starting in January. I would, you know, you won't probably be ready to decide by January, but you need to, you know, be thinking if this is what you want to do. Obviously, you got some great financial people to work with.
So kind of thinking about that schedule though, like, you know, the one you presented, you know, is August, right? We're well past August,
Yeah.
right? And we're saying January, but we don't really have that strategic plan in place either.
Yeah, you're fine.
So like that's still, I mean, it's
You're
starting
fine.
to feel kind of depressed.
The district I worked with on Monday night, the superintendent, who I know well, and I said, it'll be fine. When we started one in Beech Grove, we didn't start till June, and we did a November one.
Okay,
You know,
so that's
but-
not unreasonable.
Yeah, so you're fine.
And you can run parallel paths, I'm guessing, with some other.
The bottom line is this, I just think that you've got to plan, you got to communicate, and you got to be transparent, and you got to, you know, once, if and when you guys decide to do this, you guys can all divide up and say, hey, these are key communicators, I know I'm gonna go talk to them about it. You know, don't rely on social media, don't rely on newsletter. You're the right size community, you can get out to every key person. When I was here, I convinced Greg Gore to let me raise the tax rate a penny. But I wouldn't do it unless Greg agreed to do it back then. I mean, so like, you know all the people, you'll need to talk to them why, and educate them on what Senate Bill's doing. Because there'll be a good balancing, their property taxes are gonna go down. You're just trying to keep them level, to keep your current level of services. Does that make sense? And that's gonna transition down over a period of time. You can actually do your referendum at X amount, but you don't have to charge that full amount. Speedway, with their referendum, they've never charged the full 80 cents. They did much less, and as AV, you can balance it. This question's a little bit different. Now it's based on tax levy, not tax rate. It'll be the first year from that standpoint. So there's a lot of strategy with that. So you got plenty of time. I mean, technically, you have a legal timeline for Mrs. Sinewan there. I just gave it to you so you know. The board there is making the final determination in June. I believe Beech Grove's going in May. So that, you just need to decide by May and June what you're legally gonna do. And again, you may do the strategic plan, get it done, decide what you wanna do, if you wanna do it. If not, you can't go until 28, you know.
It's even years right now.
Yeah, even years. But and again, I'm not your superintendent, but I do understand that your debt's coming off, I don't remember what it is. But as that comes off, you can balance that with a referendum increase and maybe make it neutral to everybody, depending on what you wanna do, because that's obviously your largest bond issue, I'm assuming, because it was a 20-year bond. And you can balance it, you might be able to do a referendum. Washington Township did that, and you guys worked on that. They reduced the then capital projects by 10 cents, and they did a referendum and paid for teachers. So you, working with your financial advisors, you probably have some flexibility to do it and be very modest in what you're gonna do. Again, not knowing all the details, but.
But you gotta balance that with all the other needs, right, of the
That's right.
facilities is the
Yeah,
is the key.
but, you know, like, I'm not, unless you're gonna, it all depends on what you do with your facility studies.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things you can kind of work through that to make it very, very reasonable. There was a study done by a gentleman out of Purdue that any referendum for 15 cents or less, most of those won. One district I'm working with now, theirs is 10, and I talked to him yesterday, he's gonna drop it to 8, because when you drop it, that changes the question from increase to reduce. You know, so I mean, there's just a lot of strategies that you can work through with that. One of the last things I'll share with you, and is this, this is Mrs. Sinewan. So what I did is, I took what David and I have worked on now for a number of years, I took the 18 months, that small calendar, I expanded into what we call practical planner, and these are just all the stuff you need to do. And I'm sure as Trent looked at this, he goes, oh, because it's a lot. Now, I'm not gonna go through it all, but these all have, I love Google Docs, they all have links. Like, for example, I take all the referendum stuff, I gave it to Mrs. Sinewan, they got PowerPoints, they've got all the things from the 3 different school districts. Your leadership team, a planning calendar like I showed you, you want a referendum website, you know, I put that in there, just a lot of different things, and then,
We'll help craft that
yeah.
messaging and
Yeah.
work with your FA on developing the tax calculator.
So like I said, Beech Grove and Minnesota, they gotta jump on it. But that doesn't mean you can't do it and be successful at 26. You just have to talk to your community and see what they want. But yeah, just a lot of stuff, you know, a lot of things. I'm telling you, Mark and his team will be really important, quite frankly, because you wanna get videos out with the facts. And I don't know if he's got them on here, I've got them on another one, all the videos we did. For example, Bill Davis was the athletic director at my previous district for 20 years. We did a video, he did not say vote yes, he just said, you know, talked about the needs of the district. Again, you can do a lot, you just wanna stay away from saying voting yes. Your PAC can do that, you'll need to form a PAC. But there's a lot of things you can do to just get the message about your needs and what you've done to cut, a lot of different things. But I just wanted to show you that's just a lot of stuff, and you got time to do it if you wanna do it. David, jump in, just anything else you can throw out, I'm just trying to.
Can you kind of speak to, I mean, like, as I look through this, I mean, like, there's a lot of money here, right? I mean, there's a lot of, you know, pamphlets and videos, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys aren't working for free, and nobody
Right.
else is either, right?
Right.
Like, where does that, like, does that come out of school funds? Or does it come out of PAC money? And
So-
if
so
so,
majority
which
will
funds
come
does
out-
it come out of? Where's it?
Majority will come out of PAC funds.
Okay.
But there's certain things you can do. For example, my previous districts, our contractors paid for newsletters that went out, and they just talked about the needs of the school, did not say vote yes. So there's things you can do that way, but if there's anything that says vote yes, you'll need to raise money. Go to your teachers association. IST will give you money for referendums traditionally. There's other sources we can help you go talk to raise money.
And that money's being raised into that PAC fund, right?
Yes,
And
yeah.
then, once it's in the PAC, then you can use it for
Yeah.
kind of what you need it for.
You cannot use any, go ahead.
To advocate, you know, the PAC is your yes, is your advocacy.
Right.
So the district will have, the superintendent team will decide on the things that, the tools, the best means of communicating with folks. So those vary from district to district. Some of those are newsletters, direct mail pieces, things like that. For your district to size here, I mean, it's pretty reasonable. It's pretty fairly low cost projects in terms of communicating. We already have a lot of things in place, so it's just a matter of adding this new content, this new language. When the PAC comes up, you know, you can raise money. You can't raise funds from companies, for example, that have contracts with the
Right.
district. So if you have somebody, I was saying, Chartwell's, I'm not sure if that's a company that does food service or not, they would not be able to.
They couldn't contribute.
Schmidt could not,
Right.
okay?
Right.
But,
Mr. Schmidt could.
yes, Manny, for example.
Right.
Company cannot. So there are funny laws there that we have to adhere to. They're very tough. So, but with the PAC, it's something that is a different entity from the district that will be very political language. And, you know, depending on what we get in terms of feedback from the community, the PAC should be able, if you will, in addressing those types of challenges, those questions. Because one of the things you immediately have to start to talk about is the question, the public question needs to be clarified. That's one thing that we need to talk about. You know, and then the other thing is all the things that will come up on social media. So you have to find, you know, there are tactics and ways of communicating and kind of trying to tamp that down. We were very successful in Avon recently. They had a heck of a team, they had a heck of a PAC. I've not worked with such a tight PAC in the years I've been doing this. But, you know, we had 25 to 30 people on PAC call meetings. We had door-to-door operations, we had phone call ops. There was a lot of activity coming out of that PAC, and they needed to do it because the lieutenant governor knocking on doors, telling people to vote no, there's radio station telling them people to vote no, and they did a true grassroots effort. And the school district, again, didn't really go outside of its way to change or add new things. Maybe they purchased banners, for example, to put out football games with QR codes on it so you can scan it with your phone and check your voter registration. Things like that, low dollar, again, high impact types of things.
Okay.
And we'll draw
And
on
then-
a complete budget for both.
And then who runs the PAC?
You'll have to, the PAC will have to come together and create
Okay. It'll have its own governing board or
Exactly.
whatever.
Co-chairs are you have to have a chair, you have to have a treasurer. Those are by law the two officials of the PAC that you have to have.
I'll give you an example. So at Beech Grove, I was the PAC,
Yes.
okay? What I mean by that, we didn't have a lot of parents involved. It was my administrators, and we met after school, and we worked on it. At Westfield, I did it myself.
When you were the superintendent or
Yep.
after? Okay.
No, when I'm superintendent, I ran it. You know, I don't want to speak for Westfield now, but there's a lot of schools district on the north side that are going to do it. I would get my PTOs involved now just because of the political stuff.
Right.
We had no opposition, except a couple of Facebook people. You've got a lot of people in this community that would probably come up and help on it. But the bottom line is your superintendent has to lead it.
Right,
I mean,
okay.
that's just the bottom line. I worked with two districts in Michigan 2 years ago. I knew which one was gonna win and lose based on the superintendent. Not her fault, she was brand new, didn't know the community. The one in Texas we did last spring, superintendent would not go to early voting. I mean, I gave him all kind of strategies. He's no longer the superintendent. They had a new superintendent come in this year. There were 300 voters in Prairie Lee, Texas, total, 300. Neatest gym in the world. But this interim superintendent and the assistant, they ran it and won by 9 votes. In Texas, every bond issue, you have to do a referendum, same thing with Michigan. Indiana, we're okay from that. But it's a lot of grassroots effort, but the bottom line is this, it's on the shoulder of the superintendent. No matter what you do, I would encourage you to get him some help. You know, it consumes you. And in my previous district, I had assistant superintendents could do things, but it rests with that person. It just does. And it's just the and quite frankly, the board. I was very fortunate. I had 7 board members, 1 and 5 at the other. They all got the 50 votes I asked them to get to. You know, you have a lot of people in this district that would rally and support it. You have some that won't. That's just the reality of it. It's all dependent on what you can do. I'm just thinking out loud, your debt, and there might be some ways you can do some things there. But again, that's why you guys have a financial advisor to help with that. So.
And the PAC should look like the community.
Yeah.
So if you have a lot of farmers, there should be a couple of farmers. You
Yeah.
know, if you have a lot of small businesses, you got a chamber representative, or realtors or financial advisors are always great to have on a PAC because they can always speak to property values and connection with school districts, things like that. So when you start to think about a PAC, you start to really think about all the players that would be a part of that, and then their networks, so that we can access and use their networks to do the real grassroots work. We're meeting for donuts, or having lunch with pastors, for example, are very important to communicate with, because every Sunday they have a constituency, if you will, right with them all the time. So we want to make sure they are educated in all the facts, so that they know to make good decisions, and encourage people to vote because they can.
And then this might be a really dumb question, but, and maybe you're gonna get to it, or maybe not, but just like, in general, referendum funds, say you have a referendum, you have it. Is it spelled out like, oh, this is just for operations, or this is just for education? Or is it like a mixed fund?
Great
That
question.
you can use for different things? How does that?
The answer is yes, but you have to be transparent. So now, you have to, in a referendum, you have to state exactly what you're gonna use it for. Broad categories. Teachers, operates, and that's part what you have to turn into DLGF. The referendums that I did previously, we didn't have to do that, but they've changed the law now. And so the 4 that just took place in Indiana, you can go online, you can see boom, 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 boom. And what I always suggest, the one district I met with yesterday, I said, do you have on your website what you've been spending the money on? He goes, no. I said, get it on there now. And because you want to be transparent. I was surprised, my previous district, I went to look for it, we had it on there, they redid the website, it's not on there. But I think that's important. You have, if you have an existing, you put on there, this is what we're doing, down to the broad categories in which you spent. But you have to announce that ahead of time when you file your paperwork.
But it's one referendum, and you say, I need funds for these 8
Yeah,
things,
8
or
things.
whatever, and
Yeah.
then you get the one referendum, and that
Yeah,
funds
that's it,
the
yeah.
8 things. You just can't change it after you've done it.
There's
right?
3 types of referendums. There's a safety referendum. The one
Okay.
district I met with yesterday, they're renewing their safety referendum. Actually, 2 that I've met with are doing safety referendums, you know, for counselors, and, you know, they have a large school safety, security force. You can do one for construction, and you can do one for operations. All the referendums I've heard so far, and there's 30 that have already talked about, they're all operating to make up for Senate Bill 1.
Yeah.
I would not suggest you do a operating and construction at the same time. We won 2 of those in my previous district, but I think right now, the district I was working with, they were gonna do an $80 million construction one before Senate Bill. I said, that's too high, cut it in half, and come back, you know, like I did previously. Do one, come back 5 years later, do the other, because constructions you can do simultaneous. You can actually have 2 operating referendums. Wayne Township has 2 operating referendums simultaneous, like 4 or 5 years apart. The new Jeff's leaving the superintendent, and they're talking about how they can consolidate that. When Jeff Butts won their last referendum at Wayne, he went to every church in the district and spoke. You know, the men's counselor, when I was at Beech Grove, I got to speak at 2 churches before COVID hit. But your community and your churches, they'll be really great to listen and help get the message out.
And if
Well,
it,
we've always used Ice Miller to help us with our bond issues. I notice Ice
Yeah.
Miller's name.
Yeah, they do
But
most of them.
what is their role? Obviously, they give legal advice, but do they have any other role in helping with the referendum?
Yeah, great question. So what will happen, Ice Miller and your financial advisors, they'll get together and their chat, I mean, that's all part of it. Some districts have two financial advisors, one will sell the bonds and one will, my previous district, we had one, but they'll get together, they're all connected, they know each other, and they'll develop that timeline that you have right there. And, that's good to even say, hey, listen, we're thinking about doing it, and even start talking to them about what the question might look like, if you're confident at some point in time. But say they do that, they will advise you also on the do's and don'ts. And if when in doubt, you want a legal opinion from your attorney on what you can do. I mean, there's general stuff. You can do voter registration, you can talk about your referendum. But if you start saying vote yes, then the opposition, for example, if I send something out that said, I want you to vote yes for the referendum via email, then the opposition could ask to do the same thing. So you don't ever want to cross that line, because you don't want to do that. You can be at football games in the fall, you can pass out vote yes yard signs, but if there's opposition, you have to let them do it too. So they play, Eric or whoever you guys work with, they'll lay it all out, they'll lay the timeline out, and they'll work side by side with the financial advisor just to make sure what you're doing is appropriate and legal.
We've been working with Kristen McClellan.
Yeah.
She was a young attorney with Jane Miller many years ago. Now she's excellent to work with.
Yep.
She's taken over a lot of Jane's clients since she's retired. Yeah, she's doing those now as we speak.
So if the board went down this path, we went down the path of a referendum, and we said we need this much money, and we, put it before the voters, and the voters were to accept the referendum, right? A referendum's in place for 7 years?
8 years now.
8 years? And then at the end of the 8 years, you
Have to renew it or let it just die away.
It either dies or you renew.
You can renew it. For example, my first one at Beech Grove, we kept it the same for the first, we did ours early. You always want to renew early in case you don't win. So a lot of schools are due in 28, or some are even 30, but they're going 26, because if they lose, they want to make the cuts. You don't want to go right up now with 2 years. You don't want to go up to the edge.
Right.
So a lot of them are doing them early just to cover themselves.
And then do you referendum on an amount or a rate, and is it annual, or is it like over the life of the 8 years?
So this is how it used to be up until this fall, okay? It used to be a tax rate. So we did 35 cents at one district, the other one we did, actually, we dropped it down to 17. So it's AV times the rate, and that's what you get. And so when the AV went up, you got more money.
Or if they built more places, more houses, or more
Yeah.
investment in the
So
community?
Representative Thompson and the others said, we're not gonna do that anymore. It's now going to be based on the levy, okay? In other words, it doesn't matter what so in other words, let's say you do X amount. For example, one district's doing $2 million a year. That will never go up for 8 years now. It's set
At 2 million?
at 2 million.
And then the rate would just change, it'd go down if you had more investment in the community, the rate would go down because
Yeah.
you're spreading it over a bigger base.
Now, if the rate went down, you wouldn't collect your 2 million, you're gonna collect less. For example, at Beech Grove, our AV went down, and we're at 35 cents, so our levy went down.
Yeah, I was thinking though, if the AV goes up, because
Yeah,
of
it's still-
investment, the rate's gonna go down, right?
That's right.
Because it's
down.
gonna get $2 million on a
That's
bigger
right.
base, so it's a
But
smaller
yeah, the
percentage.
levy, absolutely, but the levy will never go up once you do it.
Right.
Which is, I think that's fair to taxpayers, quite
Right,
frankly.
so it's always $2 million, and so what you're selling to people today may not be the same tax rate and same tax burden on them as it is a couple years from now.
And let me make it clear, this board is not saying they're doing a $2 million referendum.
No, I'm not saying we're doing a referendum, just to be clear.
No, but I'm saying, and I think that's really fair to taxpayers.
Yeah.
Because they've agreed to this amount, so, it affects them, so, because if their AV goes up, the rate's gonna go down, so they're paying the same. Up until this upcoming referendum, if the rate went up, if the AV went up, their
Tax went up.
their tax is gonna go up, because the value of that house is, on a construction. Now, you can change that, though, every year when you do when you get your budget order, you can always drop the rate, or the levy, when you get your budget order. Even though you haven't approved, like Speedway's never done their full, amount.
That was the next thing I was gonna
Yeah.
ask. So you could do, make up any number, right?
Yeah.
And say, this is how much we're gonna do if it passed.
Yeah.
And then you only need 20% of that. You could take 20% of it for that year, 30% the next
That's right.
year.
Yeah, there's one district.
Or whatever you would need.
The board did a referendum, a new board came on, and they refused to approve the budget and allow the referendum referendum to go through. That was about 15 years ago. So you have a lot of flexibility to control that. For example, but again, it's different now because whatever that levy is, again, it's assessed valuation times rate is your levy. That's what it is. It can never go above that. It could go down if your AV drops, you know, but, which is, again, I think it's fair to taxpayers.
But you would see, like, if you were, say you were just trying to replace the gap in the
Yes.
funding that's caused by SB1, right?
Right.
Say you were just replacing that gap.
Yeah.
You also have your normal tax rates that
Right.
fluctuate based on AV. So theoretically, your AV could go up, raising more revenue,
Right.
right? Which means you could use less off of the referendum.
Absolutely.
Because you're getting it through just kind of natural
If your
growth of the
operations
fund,
went up,
right?
Yeah.
I
You
mean,
would- you would
assuming the
always-
AV goes up.
You would always want to advertise the full amount, but then, you know, Trent will get the budget order normally in December. He can work with you as the board and say, listen, you know, the operations went up, so let's not, even though you advertise the full XYZ, you don't have to, you know, you can send back to Dale, Jeff, we don't want the full amount, we don't want the full levy. So you have a lot of flexibility.
So, sorry to have a lot of questions.
No, it's
on this,
great.
but
You're
Then
great.
like thinking about like our tax rate at the $1.07, right? We've chosen to stay at $1.07. I think we had some room to go up from that, correct? Is the theory that we should let that go up naturally? Like next year when we do our budget, even if we didn't do a referendum? Like, and
I would, just because you gotta take care of your kids.
or is it, yeah, or is it better to do the referendum and, or does it matter? I guess to a taxpayer, it wouldn't matter, right? They're paying it in either the referendum or the,
I'd have to really see numbers.
yeah, oh, no, I get it.
The one thing I wanna point out though, and David, you help with this, so this decrease to AV is gonna be over 7 years, I think. So, but you're gonna ask for what you're predicting using Stiefel, what that's gonna be at year
Year seven.
7, okay? You probably don't want to, you know, even though advertise that, you're not gonna collect that, cause you wanna balance that as their AV's going down.
Right.
You wanna balance that out, cause you don't really wanna raise the taxes
Right.
very much at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no,
So as
absolutely.
their AV's going down, you wanna, and, you know, say you're gonna accept more of that to try to keep it as neutral as possible.
Right.
At least that's the strategy I thought.
So you're kind of setting it on worst case.
Yes.
Is what
yes.
you're doing, and then you're managing the best case.
And here's the example.
And if your AV goes up, you got an even better case, right?
The other night when I met with this board, and they were unanimous about, yeah, we wanna do something. And they said, well, maybe they'll tweak it in 27. Well, if they do great, you can lower the levy that you've advertised based if they change Senate Bill 1 to give you some relief.
Right.
You can always lower it. At Westfield, I hate to keep on using those examples, but that's what's in my mind. We did before I got there, they did a 30-cent construction referendum. It's at 13 cents now. They never charged 30 because the AV's going up. The moment it was put in place, they did like 22, but they did it this. So you can always lower it over what the voters have approved.
And I guess I'm thinking, you know, I would expect Monroe over the next 8 years to continue to see growth.
Yes,
Right, I mean,
absolutely.
organic growth of buildings
Yeah.
and things like that, which would raise the AV, even though the value of any individual property is declining because of SB1.
And one thing
I
working
think
with Stiefel or Policy Analytics, that they do a lot of great work. You can actually break your AV down by new growth and current growth. So for example, if you're a district that has a lot of new growth, let's say a bunch of new homes come in, you're not worried about them as much as you are the farmers who have this. I mean, so you can look at that growth between the different categories and decide, well, you know, a lot of our AV growth is here, so we're gonna go ahead and take some of that. And you mentioned that, so looking at new growth and current growth of current people, you can make decisions based on that, and policy analytics, and I'm sure Stiefel can do all that work to be able to break that down.
And referendum money is outside of like property tax
Yes,
caps?
it is.
And then can other entities do referendums? And I guess I'm thinking like, you know, I think SB1's not just hurting schools, it's hurting small towns and fire stations and
Hospitals.
things like that. Who else can do
Hospitals
referendums?
can, so when we did our first one in Beech Grove, I was called General Hospital, it was the hospital, they did one too, okay? Cities and towns can raise a local property income tax, which is a huge discussion right now going
Right.
on in different places. They allow them to do that, and there's a real balancing act. you always have to look at the total tax rate.
And that's what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I'm thinking every entity is gonna go get their
Yeah.
share. I mean, the services didn't get cheaper, right,
Yeah.
with SB one.
I think one of the
So
key
everybody's
things is
gonna look
having
for-
charts that you can show your community that, yeah, your AV's going down, and we're just trying to maintain where we are right now, maybe raise it, whatever that might be. But I mean, those charts and doing videos and getting them out, and again, I would find every key farmer in the community and, you know, go, you know, invite them to lunch and talk to them. They gotta, people have to see it. You wanna keep the tax rate as new, you know, with this loss, you wanna be able to make that up without going too much about it.
Right.
And when considering a tax rate, it's also important to think of options. So you have a Cadillac plan, a Ford plan, and a Toyota plan, I'll just put it that way. That way people understand that, first of all, the Cadillac plan is giving you all these, you know, all the great things, you know, but it's what you want. But then, you know, the bottom, number 3 would be what you need. And then, so maybe then there's a sweet spot somewhere in the middle. And presenting that and asking, as guys are talking about, when you talk with farmers or local business owners or, you know, home groups, homeowner groups, that you can talk with those folks, you give them some options, so you can see where they're comfortable. Giving people, the public some it's rare, you know, you usually don't get an option, you know, but listening to that feedback helps inform your number, what rate you're gonna come back to, because if you go for the high one, you could bite you know, and if you go too low, you might have to come back again, earlier than you wanted to.
And I'm guessing there's a way to translate this, if we were to get to this step, right, where you're like, what, this is how much it is on $100,000 house or $300,000 house.
Yes.
We're talking about $40 or
be,
something
yeah.
like that, right?
Steve will do all that.
That's
Yes.
where Steve will
Yeah.
come in.
Yep.
Okay.
And a
Sorry, I
really
was
great
trying to
tax
figure out who does
calculator
what.
that you can use on your phone. You
Yep.
just go to the website and put in your assessed value, and then it tells you not only will it tell you your new monthly rate, it'll also tell you the difference.
Right.
That
Yeah, because
has-
I just think it changes the
That has to
conversation,
be on
right?
your website.
Okay.
You have to put tax calculator on your website,
Right.
which, you know, it's important for them to be able to do that, so.
I just think it's easier when you talk, you know, oh, it's $20,
Yeah.
right?
They will
That's
tell a
easier
lot.
than saying, no, hey, we're raising 2 million.
Yeah,
Well,
you
a lot of
wanna break it,
argument and because, you know, on social media, you'll see, you know, why are you doing this? How much is this gonna cost me? What's the money going to be used for? Is the superintendent getting a new Maserati out of this? I mean, and all these types of things will come up, and then I've seen it hundreds of times where you just post the link to the tax calculator, just say, look for yourself. People do it, and then you don't see them commenting anymore.
Right.
Because all of a sudden, like, oh, it's only $12 a month.
But the key is to kind of filter them to that, right? You gotta get them to go there.
You gotta get them there.
and it'll be important, there's a lot of different things, you wanna make sure you're watching social media to make sure there's correct facts, and, at Beech Grove, I had 2 board members, they would get on social media and just lay out the facts. Last district, I said, please stay off social media, just because, but it's important, you know, like you can, again, I'll go back and say, as I look at Mark, the videos that you put together with the facts are so important in sending them out in the newsletter. We'll still take a lot of questions, but I do wanna look at this before I forget. This is
That I did not print out for him because it was
Oh.
so big.
okay, let me see
At
if I
least-
can get it, come back on the screen.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. Okay, so what this is, and this is a voter registration of people that are registered to vote. And there's categories on here, and you can just email it to them. But the key thing is this, who's registered to vote, and then we always cross-reference it, do they have kids in school? Okay, so you'll know by looking, okay, that's a parent, that's a good yes vote, I gotta go talk to them. And then it has, do they want a yard sign, and all that other kind of stuff. But I add this category called tag, okay? Because it is, my experience is that if you don't encourage people to get involved on your team, they may not. So I was very adamant with my principals, you will contact every one of your parents. Let me rephrase that. I encourage you to contact them. And then I would get volunteers, I know this person, so they tag that person. So then they're responsible for communicating to that person, text, voicemails, and things like that. So you wanna go through, because, you know, he can't do it all. You know, you guys could go through this list and say, oh, I know these 25 people, put your name, hey, I'll call them, I'll take care of them, and remind them and things like this. So this database is critical, and he's got one, and it's important. That tells you what doors you go knock on and things like that. And then we create what are called walking list, what people are. In Westfield, walking on Saturdays did no good because everybody was at Grand Park. I learned that, So we sent a lot of text and a lot of videos and things like that. So always want to be very careful. You want to be very accurate on what you can and cannot do, And face-to-face is wonderful, so. David, what have I missed? That's the 10,000 feet view.
I mean, there's a lot of engagement, obviously, there's a lot of moving parts to it, there's a lot of moving parts just on the school district side, and then there's another ton of moving parts on the PAC side. So, but I think our experience, Dr. Kaiser and I have worked together a number of times, and I've been involved in 65 referenda, and recently of the special elections, I was part of 3 of them, helping them, everything from data to writing the websites, things like that. So a lot of experience that we can bring to the table, and I'm not gonna tell you we've seen it all, because every district, every referendum, there's something new that comes up. So we're quick to adapt, and adjust our strategies and follow our tactics and everything, because I believe in having a plan, but occasionally you have to call an audible to make sure you're adjusting everything correctly, so that you're listening to the community, hearing what their challenges are to this, and then finding ways to address it honestly with, not just transparency, but with accuracy with the messaging and everything. So that's what I think we are very good at doing.
Did you say 65 successful? Or 65 total?
Of the 65 I've been with, we've lost 9.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask.
And why did you lose those? What do you think?
Variety of reasons. Variety of reasons. They're not unique to like an urban or a rural area. I've been involved with everything from Gary to
New Albany.
New Albany, to some smaller Clinton Central, Mississinawa. So the difference. So a lot of it has to do with the community either is confused about something. So, for example, in Twin Lakes, folks were confused about where recent dollars had been spent on new turf for a football stadium, football field, and some other upgrades that had been done there. And then the next year they were coming. Then they also had not a redistricting, a consolidation.
Yeah.
They closed an elementary school.
Building a new
The
school.
community wasn't happy with
That's my
that.
home district.
And then
Yeah.
they
That's where
saw
I'm from.
money being spent, $1 million plus on a new turf, and then the school district's now coming to you saying, we want to raise your taxes.
Yeah.
So that was very challenging, because now we had a mea culpa from the school board saying, hey, we messed up on that, on the consolidation part of this, but then try to explain to everybody, like, oh no, we don't use operating funds to pay for the turf. You're too late. If you have to spend more than a minute or 2 trying to explain it,
Yep.
you're in a pickle.
And they were building a brand new elementary school to replace the elementary they closed, which is still not open, but it should be here
The
soon.
other
Yeah.
thing is just the engagement level. So, I mean, teachers need to be involved, for example. You have a teachers union, having them at the table early is important, because teachers are great ground troops, if you will. They're good at they knock on doors, they know people in the community, they know everybody, they've had lots of kids pass through their class, they know those parents. So those are folks that need to be involved. So where you have little to no engagement from teachers, you really start to struggle, because I've done 25 years of political campaigns. The number one way of influencing a vote is to knock on the door. You all run for office. You knock on a door. You meet people at events. That's retail politics. Those are the things you have to go do. Then the other layers are easy to do, texting and phone calls. But I get phone calls every day from somebody trying to find my house or sell me insurance. I don't pick up the phone anymore unless I recognize it. And text messages, I never tap on a link that's from some number I don't know anything about. So those are great for certain things, like get out the vote, some type, making people aware of early vote, things like that. Those have a place. But otherwise, you have direct mail and you have knocking on doors. Superintendent's you're the front man. So being out there and talking, who's on your PAC? Where are they coming from? What parts of leadership in the community are they? Are they a pastor? Are they a realtor, the chamber president? Things like that. So all of those things need to be moving, all the pistons, if you will, need to be firing in sync, and we need to give as many moving parts as we can. So when districts fail, they usually have, either because the community is making a referendum about the school board or a superintendent, or some bad decision that was made before, or it's because of a lack of PAC activity, really, just not engaging the voters. So those are the ones. Some of these other districts we've worked with where they've won either renewals. Renewals are a little easier to win, especially if you're not raising the rate, anything like that. But otherwise, yeah, it's fickle. The public is sometimes, they can be upset about all kinds of things. The cost of milk might affect the way, $12 a month increase, I'm just throwing the numbers out there, might be something that would be crippling to a budget.
Sure.
So these are things we have to take into consideration as we develop the messaging, and you all, deciding on what that rate would be, so.
When's the go, no-go? Like, when are you fully committed? Like, at the beginning, or are you fully committed on the date you,
When the
like in
board,
this,
when the board approves it.
when the board approves it?
When the board approves a resolution, we recommend that, like, the next day you form a pact. Because it takes a minute to get a pact to get its legs underneath.
Like in the timeline that you provided, that was like the May date,
Yeah,
right?
if you look at Mrs. Cinewell, you'll see there's, I gave you that one just.
So like in this one, that you're
Yeah.
giving the example, it'd be May 18th is
Yeah.
the date you're
Mayor
100% in.
You're in.
May or June.
I mean, you're doing a lot of work
No,
before then, but
they've
if you're
got-
getting a bad
they've-
feel, you can pull the plug.
They've got June 15th on here
Yeah.
Okay.
for the resolution.
Right.
You have to have a hearing, then you come back and approve the resolution.
Okay.
And part
And
of,
Steve will work with Ice Miller on that, so.
part of superintendent plan, that you're talking about practical planner element, it all helps you get all of the resources and messaging all ready to go, leading up to. So in your minds, you have to make a decision before June, or May,
Sure.
right? So while we're doing that, we're working with the superintendent, working with staff, you start to develop the message base so that you start to, also getting feedback from the community. Where's the pushback going to be? Those types of things, so you can develop a strategy, right?
I'll do one quick activity before we close, but what are the questions? And again, this is just trying to, my goal is just give you information. And I will tell you this, he'll lose about 20 pounds doing it. Well, not if you have a lot of cookies with your coffee.
And being that we'd be doing it in 2026, which is a general election year, we're not responsible for paying for the election like Avon had to this time, right?
Right, yeah.
So we wouldn't have to pay for that,
Pay
so
for it.
that's not on us.
The one year we did it at Beach Grove because the hospital did it, ours was really minimal. And now that was an exception. They let these schools do it here in 25, but this point on, it's.
Trent, I have a question. With our ability to issue bonds, are we gonna have to choose between an operating referendum and a building referendum?
Well, I mean, no, but my choice would be to do operating. That's what we need to do, in my opinion.
Steve, I can probably answer that, just knowing a little bit about this. You've got X amount dropping off the elementary, whatever that number is.
Yeah.
Okay, so any other project you do, and you don't have to do the construction referendum because you're gonna have bonding capacity.
Yeah.
So let's say it's 20 cents, I have no idea what it is, but if it's 20, you could come back and issue debt for 10, do the referendum for 10 cents, it becomes neutral. So, again, I don't wanna pretend to know what all the details are, but you might have some opportunities with debt. I've seen that before where they had debt dropping off. Now, the question's still gonna say you increase it this amount. But you have the ability to communicate, yeah, but we're dropping this, we're doing this, so yours is gonna be really looking at this total tax rate. What's it gonna go down based on the Senate bill, how do you fill those gaps?
And then how do you balance the facilities and things
Yeah, how
like
do you
that?
do
Because
that?
you don't have that
Yeah.
bond room anymore,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's
And the
consumed
problem,
at that
the
point.
problem you have here, just assuming, same thing I had at Beech Grove, you don't have a lot of general obligation bond. A lot of districts like Mooresville, they have a lot of, their debt service is really low. They can borrow general obligation bonds and pay them off quickly to help with short-term facilities. My previous to Westfield, we did that. They borrowed $9 million after I retired, and they can pay it back in 3 years because they know AV is gonna go up. So again, I think working with Stiefel, and you might have a Monroe-Gregg grad there who's actually working with you on that. Chad, and he can lay all that out. I mean, he can lay all this out, he can look at your debt, he can say, yeah, if it's I don't remember what it was. And that was a combination of geo bonds and I think it was lease rental, but I've slept since then. But, you know, so you can look at that, you may have some flexibility to do something. Similar to Washington Township did. They, again, lowered their capital projects, did a referendum, so it was neutral for them.
And I've already had some early conversations with Chad about all of this, so he knows where we could be heading, so he'll be ready when we're ready to start talking to him too.
Yeah. I guess in my head, I'm still thinking like, you still got an elementary school that's bursting at the seams and still another 200, 300 houses to go in at Homestead, right, that they're building right now.
Right.
So I mean, there's still gonna be other needs
Yeah.
that bond money,
Yeah.
I think, is gonna have to kind of be allocated to.
Yeah, great. Well, lucky you have enough grass behind the elementary
Right.
school to go there
Yeah.
if you wanted to. So that was our plan. We had actually, performance service, actually had it all designed. Those plans are probably floating around someplace. We even had, we were gonna buy the Hadley property and we were gonna make that side, we did a lot of different things we had planned, but that was in 2005.
We finally got
But,
a lot.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so, other questions for me, and we'll close with one quick activity. Again, just to emphasize that, obviously, this is just a lot of discussion for you guys, lay of the land, getting your community involved will be real critical no matter what you do, but strategic planning is where you start, and again, that can be done relatively quickly, but I really encourage you to get parents involved, and as he talked about with you, Pat, get a variety of people involved, various age groups involved from that standpoint, so. Okay, I'd like to do a quick activity. This is called a think, share. So for 30 seconds, think of what's going through your mind, okay, with this whole thing. Like I did this with the Elwood superintendent, he goes, I'm overwhelmed. He's really a smart guy. So 30, out of all this, everything, what's going through your mind, what questions, okay, 10 words or less. Steve, you wanna go first?
Well, to me, it's, we obviously need to rely on the experts. Legal counsel with Ice Miller and our financial advisors. I mean, that's sort of a starting point. We need to find out what's our ability, what can we do if we wanna do it. I mean, that's what
It's all data decision, it's all data driven, everything you do.
I think for me, I think the first thing that comes to mind is the strategic plan and the gap that we have there.
Yeah.
And two is I do think about the bandwidth of the people that have to do this. And, they are asked to do a lot of other things.
Right.
I also am thinking about, and it's not 10 words, but
It's
I
okay.
can't do anything in 10 words. But I'm also thinking about those other capacity issues that we know and the facility study that we're gonna get from Smith, and
That's gonna be critical.
that's a big, long list as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah,
Just to kind of keep things where they're at.
right,
And so, I'm kind of thinking balance and, practical approach and not excessive.
yeah. Your plan needs to be flexible.
So I guess that's what I'm thinking.
Good.
Finances and setting priorities. We've had a lot of ideas thrown at us. And as a board, I think we're gonna have to sit down and say, here's what we're looking at. And then, I think we need to consolidate what we think, but then that's when, to hear other perspectives from our faculty, the community. But I think we need to kind of have something to at least spearhead the discussion.
Yeah, starts with strategic planning.
Mhm.
A lot to process.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I mean, a lot's been thrown at us in a very short amount of time with the
Yep,
facility study,
absolutely.
with the Senate bill, potential referendum. I mean, it's a lot to process and find a direction. I think the strategic plan's really a good starting point.
Right.
But still, I mean, I feel like you really have to have a direction.
Yeah. I think that's the pretty standard response when it's a lot of stuff. I mean, we could have spent 3 hours talking about strategies and referendums, but just know that it can be done and, if your community supports it, which I believe this community would, given this community, but you'd have to work really hard and make it very transparent.
Can't assume it, right?
Yeah, right.
I think mine's just, how do we know that we're making the right decision? And once we make that right decision, what do you do if you fail? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a little heavier topic than what I expected it to be.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and again, that's what Senate Bill 1's doing to people. I mean, and I just think of all the small schools around the state that their AV's not going up and what's happening, you know. Right, you know, one large district I talked to, their finances, they're gonna be fine, they're growing enough, they're gonna be fine, they, you know, they're gonna renew it and kind of move on, and probably, I suggest they drop it 2 cents, so. But it's really, it's a lot to digest, so.
I don't wanna interrupt before Kevin gets in there, but you're talking about small schools consolidating. With all your involvement with education, don't you think that that's a driving force with some of our legislators?
Absolutely. There's a reason MODOC, Indiana, they forced them to consolidate. They have less than 200 kids in the whole district. Greene County has 5 different school corporations. I would agree with Leslie, I'm not sure it makes sense that you don't have to consolidate the high schools. And they did that over here in Shakamak, and they did that. They combined it, I forget the exact name of that now, but they combined them and it seems to work. You're not gonna have that much savings necessarily. But yeah, this is the driving force behind this.
Sorry,
Absolutely.
Kev.
No.
No, you're right. The first thing I thought of is, I know who I'm gonna talk to, what farmers I'm gonna talk to, and if we do it, we're gonna win. Like, talking to my thing was just who I was gonna talk to, and,
Yeah.
you know, when I was thinking about who would be key players to get the message out if we do it.
Again, I'll go back and say again, with debt dropping off, you might have some creative things you might rather do, but
Just having a facts form too, like you
Yeah.
said, graphs and,
I got,
that's it.
Trigger
you wanna
go
interrupt
last.
you?
Go ahead.
I'll just, you know, I'm sure you're aware that in our community, there are also a lot of people that are having biased decisions based on the new potential data center that's gonna be going in.
Yeah.
I wonder how that affects, you know, people's perspective when they go in to vote on something like this. I mean, does that create them already kinda angered at certain things, or?
It's new.
Yeah.
I'll be straight with you. It's a new thing. It's a new challenge. Usually when you think of some large project coming in, it's creating a lot of jobs. A factory, for example, but the warehouses and data centers will employ a lot of new people. So I'm listening to I was listening just this morning to the discussion in Decatur, with the data center that they're talking about building out there, just hearing the community pushback on it, seeing what's there. So I think people get fired up about it. I think it's a different issue that they're upset about. We don't understand what these things are. They're massive facilities that make lots of noise, take up lots of water, and use a lot of electricity that I think taxpayers are probably gonna get burdened with paying for. So I think that is something that we have to start to take into consideration when we look at these, because they're all over. They're starting Michigan City, they're talking, it's like 4 or 5 counties that I've been just
Yeah.
involved in recently, have been, somebody's talking about a data center. So-
And I've been driving all over the state, I see no data centers, no battery storage. I mean, I see sometimes they have all 3, no, and,
Yes.
so it's concern, yeah, and I think that's something to factor in.
We've already broken ground.
I think you could also see a lot of anger and drive more
Well-
people to the polls, right? I think
Well,
the
the
voting
commissioners-
might be bigger because of the commissioner
The
races.
commissioner races, because several of the commissioners said, I don't think I'm gonna run, so that's an open seat, and
I could see just a higher turnout for
Mhm.
mid-year.
Well, yes, so to answer your question, my first thing is to say that it's new, so we have to see some numbers. The referenda that the special elections that were just held, I think there were 6 around the state, and none of them had data center as an issue, this time. So, but coming up, 2026, there's a number of school districts, whether it's east side of Indianapolis, Warren Township, things like that, where they're being proposed, and they're being proposed for once. Franklin Township's another one, but they propose it once, I think, to test the waters, and then I think they'll come back again with different proposals, maybe different structures. So it is something we need to monitor.
I would think it'd be easier too with the messaging on a referendum if you have 100 of them out there.
I would agree, 100%.
I mean, you're not on an island doing it yourself in Monrovia. I mean, people are gonna see it on Channel 6 and every district around is going to be doing it.
Yep.
And so it's gonna be kind of socialized and people are gonna be used to seeing it. If
give
we
Rob
decide to
Kendall
go that
more
route, I think that's gonna help
to
us
talk
well.
about.
Well, in Carmel, for example, when Carmel had to have hold an operating referendum. It was, suddenly referendums were an issue.
Right.
Because they were writing letters to the editor, the Indianapolis Star, they were on the news, they were talking about everything about the question to why we have to do this. And people, in small, poorer areas, districts were saying, yeah, heck, if Carmel thinks this is a bad idea, what do you think it means to us? So yes, it's because there were a lot of referenda that year. And I think all but maybe one or two didn't pass.
All but one.
All but one
Passed.
that year. So, so there could be, because the volumes turned up, more people are hearing the.
And I feel like it's gonna I feel like people historically have thought about referendums as kind of excess. And now I think they're gonna get the message that it's
It's not.
or survival
It's
or
replacement, yeah.
or replacement. I don't know if survival.
But you also have a lot of mayors and, town managers around the state that are, writing op-eds in local papers, talking about what this means to us, it's hurting our, we're not going to have to cut cops, we're going to cut firemen. So I think people are hearing this impact everywhere on all kinds of
Right.
levels. So, they might as well go in and, bite their lip while they're voting yes, but we have to, it's gonna be, 2026 will be high drama politically everywhere. So those are the things we have to kind of keep our eye on. So, we've passed many with complicated 2020, 2016. We've had challenges before where the political atmosphere was pretty chaotic and wild, but at the end of the day, I've seen people who just go in to vote for the referendum.
Yeah, it feels like it'll have
You have to
tailwind
make sure
versus
people
headwind.
understand so that it's not political.
Right.
This referendum is not political. This isn't about Republican or Democrat. This is about our kids, and we have to drive that message home.
Yeah, and obviously the board elections will have an R Democrat, an RD or independent next to it. I'm not sure, and the ones that we had, when we did ours, our head football coach was running for mayor. He's now the coach at Wabash College, but we had no board candidates. We had 4 up, we had 3 up, and there was no issue with, the referendum was not part of the board race, because all the candidates wanted to support it, so. That's something that'll be, assuming you have 3 up or 2 up?
Two.
2 up, yeah, so that was not an issue.
Yeah.
We'll save the boss for last year.
Yeah, no, I'm encouraged. I'm not overwhelmed because I've talked to enough people who, the other superintendents either ran them or know about them, so I know all the work that goes into it, so I'm not afraid of that. But I think whether we run a referendum in 26 or not, I think the strategic plan's a huge part, because it just, like what I wanted with the facility study, the strategic plan also gives us a roadmap of tying everything back to, everything we do ties back to that. So I'm encouraged. I think even if we only do the strategic plan, I agree getting community involved in that, and we've already got some stuff in the works that we're already gonna do, even in the second semester, that's gonna get some community people involved in some things. So I think it'll bring all the right people together and hopefully get everybody on the same page. So I'm encouraged by it.
And look, this isn't at you because you weren't here, but I think from a board, we've talked about strategic plans a lot, and we've never been able to get one delivered.
Right.
So like if we're gonna go down this path, we want one delivered.
Yep.
Well, we had one a long
That's-
time ago, but
Well, yeah,
it never was updated.
Yeah, 8 years ago, 9 years ago.
No,
it expired.
trust me, that's
Your
that's
strategic
my
plan should be
goal.
updated
To
and
get one done.
communicated every year.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you do that with your board meetings on an ongoing basis, that keeps it in the forefront. You don't want an end date to your strategic plan, in my opinion. It's
Right.
just- It's just constantly
It's a
going.
living document.
You can have a 5-year plan, but you ought to be updating it the second year of the 5-year plan.
Yeah.
And based on
A
the
one-year
academics,
plan.
it should
Yeah.
get all the way down to the classroom level, based on what Trent wanted. You always use example, if you want your teachers to do common formative assessments, which I think are critical to improve academic achievement, then that needs to be part of your strategic plan, and that gets to the classroom level. If you want to improve your facilities, X, Y, Z, it can be laid out very specific.
And I think 90% of the decisions we make, then you gotta be able to point right to the
right.
strategic plan and say, here's why we're doing it.
It's not- Like I said, it took me 3 referendums to finally get the early learning center. And we laid it all out, and every time we updated that 3 times, that was in there, but as much as we wanted it, we had other things that we had to get done
Yeah,
first.
it wasn't a surprise
Yeah.
at some point, right?
Yeah, and we finally got it done. So it was a good team effort, so. Well, I just appreciate that. I was very proud to pull this out and put it on tonight. A lot of great memories, like I said, Cassie was 2010, her picture's down on the wall down there as being a pretty decent athlete. Now, if she would have been in the class before or after, I'm not sure she would have got it. That class, she got it, and she's very proud. She was excited I was coming here tonight. I just appreciate it. And if I don't see you doing some work for you, I'll see you at the IGA, and, you know, so it's, I go there all the time, so, but, thank you very much.
I appreciate you coming,
Thanks,
Paul.
Paul.
So just to update the board, I'll probably have some more conversations with Paul, and then I'll update you and maybe at some point make some recommendations on what I think we should do, and I'll let you guys decide from there, so.
That's what I was gonna ask, kinda like,
Yeah.
what's our next steps, right?
Yeah, I
mean,
think Paul and I have some more conversations, and then I, you know, update you guys through either the monthly update that you get or whatever, and then, obviously, if I'm gonna recommend anything at a board meeting that to say that, hey, I think we need to work with Paul, I can, do that, and obviously that won't be a surprise to you, cause you'll know ahead of time that maybe I'm gonna make that recommendation, and then you guys would just have to vote on that we're gonna work with Paul on whatever we're gonna work
Right.
on, whether it's strategic planning, referendum, or both.
And, yeah, and it could be different steps,
Could be
right? I
different
mean, like,
steps.
we're gonna move forward got it.
Correct.
There's
Yeah.
no hurry to make a decision on referendum. You have so much more information. I mean, do the strategic plan, get the community involved. You can talk about your needs. That'll help guide you whether you think there'll be support from that group. But get those key communicators involved in that. As we said, I know I'm gonna talk to, get that cross-reference. And again, 3 meetings, you know, an hour and 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes. And the third one is just to give them the draft of the plan for feedback. It will not take that long to do, but it can be very comprehensive, and from that standpoint.
Which we could piggyback, so I already wanted to have some meetings with the community and staff on the building facility study and get feedback there, so we could almost piggyback strategic planning in with that too, so we're not like
Yeah.
meeting you guys to death,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
think it would definitely be part of the conversation.
Yep,
One thing I always throw out to you, once you invite people, open up to anybody who wants to be on it. Now, most people won't come, but, you know, you may have someone out there and say, well, I'm upset about this, put them on your team. Get them on the inside so they really knows what's going on. So I always suggest, you know, go out and tell your principals, I want so many, you as board members, so many. And then once you get your team together, say, hey, we're gonna do a strategic plan on these dates. If you're interested in being part of this team, please contact the superintendent. Because that's that transparency piece. You don't want anybody to think, well, they just selected their people, invite everybody to do it. Most people are too busy.
Yeah.
And then it'll be key, one of the key things we always do is, even after the first night, we feed it back to staff. You got, you know, staff sometimes they won't be involved just because they're kiddos and their lives are so crazy. But that communication, that newsletter going out is really important. And certain survey, you can do a lot of different things.
As you think of the composition of those teams, like, it's easy to say I want all cheerleaders, but is it smart to put some, like, doubters, or,
Yeah,
I mean, some people that are not necessarily
I
in
would-
favor? I mean, you need to hear those people's opinions, and also,
Yeah.
it gives you an opportunity to convert them, right?
Absolutely.
I mean-
I don't want to use the term your friends close, your enemies closer, but I call them distractors.
Right,
I think it's critical you talk to those distractors.
yeah, I do
Yeah.
too, I
You
think
guys-
there's always a propensity to say, oh, I'm gonna go get the friendliest people to do
Yeah.
this, right? And-
Well, you know the roads out to the west, they're named after farmers.
Yeah.
And I'd make sure you have a good sampling of those people and just look through, you guys know the key communicators, right? One of the things in referendum, I've got a Google Doc called Key Communicators. That's one of the first thing I told to start filling it in and start talking to them, go to lunch. And never, never, never use the corporation credit card when you take people out, never. Pay cash, and I don't know how many lunches I bought for patrons, and I always pay it out of my own pocket.
Yeah.
You know, you never want anybody to think that you're using corporation dollars to buy lunches. It's wrong. It's not the purpose of it, you know, but that perception is really important. So, well, I appreciate everything.
yeah.
I'm gonna,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think the bar, the food bar's still open at IGA, although
No.
I get some chicken and some mashed potatoes, but thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Okay, thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, you have to take public
We
comment
got
real
public.
quick, if anybody wants it, and then adjourn.
Any public comments? No? Then I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
Mr. Blundell, Mr. Elliott, second.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Crystal.
All opposed?